This is David Tulis. I do thank you for giving me just a minute of your time here at Nooga Radio at 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, also 95.3 HD4. That's high-tech, high-definition digital radio, 95.3 HD4. If you're traveling a far place and you want to keep us on radio, just go over to the HD side, to the digital side, and there we are. David Tulis here. I argue for local economy and the free market, and want there to be a level playing field in business because that is only just and only fair. And yet commercial government, as we endure it today, doesn't believe in level playing fields. It doesn't really believe in caring for local people, but rather it has a dollar signs flicking up and down in its eyes, as in the cartoons showing how someone is coveting money, and it is giving breaks and subsidies and direct payments to large companies, rejecting and neglecting and caring nothing for small players. Among those would be, for example, Jatco, which is in Saudi Daisy, planning on moving out of the county. And it's one of the managing partners the managing partner of Jatco is Tim Price. The company makes chemicals for textile, nonwoven textiles, and also chemicals for the corrugated box industry. Now, Tim Price, you're quoted in the story today by Dave Flessner and Mike Perry in the Time Free Press as someone who is critical of bailouts and buy-ins for big business. Tell my listener about, first of all, about your business, what it is you do, and why you are unhappy now about these payments for Volkswagen, Nissan, and Amazon, and many others.
Well, basically, first of all, I was asked not to be quoted, and I have an email stating that, so that really bothers me. But since I was quoted, I'll comment on it. First of all, these tax abatements are unfair in the way, and I'm going to start from the beginning. They're unfair as far as how they're applied, because the large businesses get them, and the reason that we want business in Hamilton County is for tax reasons, too, to help. We spend money on the roads, right, and all of the infrastructure, and they pay tax money into the city or the county, and it works that way. When they take that tax money away, they take out one of the incentives for the taxpayer to support it. So when you look at it the way they do it now, David, it basically, there's nobody measuring what they do. Do you know how they decided, or they justified these tax abatements? Do you realize how they do it?
Well, I think I have an idea, but I've got you on the phone. I want you to tell me, Tim Price, how these decisions are made.
Well, what they do is they use the University of Tennessee Business School to do a study. And
Bill Fox.
I can't remember the guy's name that does those
it's
studies.
Dr.
He was probably
Bill
quoted
Fox
in this article, but so a government entity is asked to measure something for another government entity, which has an interest in the first government entity. Tell them it's okay. So really, they're going to get the answer they want no matter what. So Volkswagen was a prime example, and that's the one I really analyzed. Volkswagen, we want to be able to pay back, I think it was 39 years is what it would take for us for Volkswagen to level out. Now, they do a lot of employment, but that doesn't help local economy. It doesn't help it. It really doesn't, except a small amount of tax money from sales tax. I mean, it helps the federal government, it helps state government, but it doesn't help the local government. And the main thing is I think it's immoral. You have the government, and a conservative would never agree to this. And what bothers me is you have these so-called Republicans and conservatives who support this stuff, and it's totally against what our philosophy is, and that's picking winners and losers. The government chooses who gets these tax abatements, and that just, to me, is it just opens up corruption to the highest order. I mean, just the highest order. So,
Tim Price, it makes the point when you have a tax abatement for any business. What you're pointing out is that business will tend to prosper and thrive And so the fact we have a program like this is an admission, a kind of an unintended admission that taxation suppresses business and lowering taxation increases employment, increases prosperity. So how come we don't draw a lesson from the abatement story that, hey, lower taxes overall would be good? Let's see what we can do to lower them overall.
Well, and everybody knows that small business is the driver of the economy. 70% of new jobs, small business. So what do? They go to these large businesses who are very small percentages of the total employment. Now you think, oh, it's great, big, huge Volkswagen. Well, they're only about 3% of the total employment in Hamilton County. I mean, you can look in the BL, the Bureau of Labor Statistics website and see that. And I mean, it's pretty easy to see. So they're very small, but they take up a lot of the county's resources in order to get them here. And mainly, Volkswagen was a badge of honor. We got Volkswagen, right? It made them all feel good. I wish Facebook should just give them Valium instead of letting them spend our tax money. But how is it fair to me that I pay taxes, and where they get you is the personality tax, right? That personality tax, I pay taxes to subsidize a rich car company, the second or third largest in the world, and small business who struggles pay for those things. Now, they do have small businesses too, in some ways, of course, when people have money to spend. But I just don't think you're not getting the bang for your buck by doing this. So, plus, it's not fair. It's not moral.
Well, now your business makes chemicals. You're a Jatco that was JAT, but now you have partners in your business and you're expanding, and you're the president of Jatco in Saudi Daisy. Why do you think that? Say something about your product, Tim Price, and your plans for your business. What's happening in your business?
We just right now the business, even though we get a lot of pressure from government, that sort of thing, the business opportunity for small businesses, because of in my area, Dow, people like that have bought up the small companies. And now a small company has a better opportunity because these customers have lost a lot of tech service and research, and that's what we're going to make sure that sort of go back to the old school and take care of the customer, make sure we give them technical help, and also we can't compete in prices with large entities, but it's tough. It's tough.
Well, in your chemical business is the strongest competition from imports, Tim, or bigger chemical businesses?
No, it's mainly from domestic chemical companies, big large ones. I mean, we compete with Dow or Celanese or people like that, and they're large companies, but they really don't care about small customers. So,
well, let's go back to the idea of these subsidies. Tim Price of Jatco, you're a president. You were quoted in this morning's story in the Chattanooga Time-Free Press, offering a kind of negative voice on the whole idea of taxpayer subsidies for business. Is there something inherently right? Is there any argument you could make that's for the system as it is? Because we have a limited number of people who work in government, they can only deal with so many prospective parties to subsidize, and so they naturally gravitate toward the big companies where there are large dollar amounts. It would be very difficult for the current staff in these local governments and their agencies to try to give subsidies to smaller businesses, so they favor the big ones. Is that a reason to explain why things are the way they are?
I don't think. What I would do is not offer tax abatements at all. I would offer opportunity for small business to have financing for cash flow. That's what hurts. That's what small businesses need, and that's what small businesses can't get. So to me, if the government does something like this, it should be offered to the small businesses, because the large businesses have financing. They have all these things. So to me, it would be easier and more productive. And also, if you provide financing for small businesses for cash flow or expansion, then they pay an interest rate which would support it. Plus, then they pay the taxes. There is no tax abatement. So it would be a much better system to do that. What it is easy, and it looks good.
Well,
now I'll get on television and cut the ribbon and, do the whole thing.
Well, in keeping...
that's why they do it. I mean, the only advantage is employment. And that is a big advantage to have a large company. But it's not a tax advantage to the local government. It's not. It's a burden.
Well, the idea seems to be there is an admission in having a tax break that it's a stimulus. So perhaps if we wanted to argue for principle, Tim Price, if you're a conservative, would it not be better to argue for principle that maybe overall taxes should be cut, and that there maybe should be an area of the county that would be a tax-free zone or a trade zone of some kind where there's no tax at all forever. Think of what would happen in the way of development in Hamilton County, drawing people here to start businesses. If they could build plants or have addresses in this tax-free zone, they would be tax-free. We would become a mecca, if you will, of capitalism if we had an area like that was permanently tax-free, no school tax, no property tax, and no claims by county government against you. We would quadruple the size of Hamilton County capitalism and we could double the size of population if we just believed in principle and allowed for all a break in taxation. Tim Price.
Well, I don't mind paying taxes if they're spent correctly, and the problem is how they spend taxes, and they need more because they don't spend it correctly. So to me, I think the county tax increase we're getting, again, for the black hole of schools, it's just a black hole, right? We throw money in it every few years, more money and more money. But this tax increase, did you hear the county mayor say, hey, we're going to try to cut back? We're going to try to cut back and 20% for the county government in order to fund the schools. If they love the school children so much, why don't they do that? But you never hear them say that. All they want is more. And I think that's poor management. When I'm tight, we find ways to save money, right? Because we want to stay in business, but government doesn't do that. It's the never ending. They eat money. It's just like a big monster eating money. And so they pat themselves on the back about a tax increase. These so-called Republicans are patting themselves on the back. Really? Now that's embarrassing if you ask me.
Well, there are only one
Tim
Price. Only one county commissioner, Tim Boyd, said no. But even he, if you looked into his thinking a little bit, he said there are 5 to 7% in cuts that are needed, and he would have been willing to go along with a tax increase. Tim Boyd was, if those cuts had been made in what he saw as unnecessary spending. So even the most dyed-in-the-wool conservative, even our best watchdog on the commission, Tim Boyd, will in principle favor a tax increase, which I think says a lot about conservatism. I think all the members of that commission, or probably most of them, are conservative, and yet in principle they're not against raising taxes. So that says, that I guess that you said that doesn't say a lot for conservatism in Hamilton County.
Well, and it's I can't remember the name of the company, but I think the conservatives made a big deal about Obama had subsidized this company to the tune of $500 million, and how heck they were criticizing. It's no different. Just because it's local, it's no different. I mean, they're being Obama. They really are, and I just don't know how they can look in the mirror and say they're conservative. I don't even think they understand what it means.
Well, let me ask you
just
a quick question, Tim. This is David Tulis. Thanks for joining us. We're talking with Tim Price, who runs Jatco in Saudi Daisy. It's a chemical business moving out of the county to avoid further dealings with Hamilton County government. You didn't really your ears didn't seem to perk when I mentioned the idea of a tax-free zone that would end taxation in a large area of the county. Why would that not work?
I really don't know, David. I really don't know if that would work. I know that we have to pay taxes for infrastructure. That helps business, okay? It helps everybody. But to me, a tax-free zone is almost like we're doing now. What I would do is make everybody pay taxes, okay? These incentives for businesses to locate here should be part infrastructure, part location, the natural things that people want or need to conduct business. And if that is not here, we're basically like a dog, like a person tying a pork chop around his neck to make the dog like him. The dog finally is going to get tired of eating a pork chop and get your neck. So these big companies, more and more, are sucking so much money from the county. I think the reason that article was written is people are starting to really get worried about it. Okay? They're getting worried about having a much bigger tax increase coming fairly soon, because all of these things have to be supported, right? So they need taxes to support it. And where are they going to get the taxes? They're going to get them from me.
Well, and that's right. And
you.
the county supports the biggest employer and the biggest, you might say, the biggest business of all in the county. And that's the public school system with 43,000 students and 6,000 employees. That's a gigantic business. And by definition, it cannot run efficiently, and it cannot be sensitive to market prices and market demands, because the market, the consumer is not the parent, is not the family, it's the state. And so there is no real incentive to provide a good service and to cut expenses, because the state is always there as guarantor. There's a guaranteed income stream. Everyone knows that next year the income stream will be about the same. No one has to really make improvements. There's not real interest in the child or the children or the families. Again, speaking as in terms of the system as a whole, there are always fine teachers, and there always, there are some caring parents, but the system is flabby and destined to be inefficient and bad.
But David, too, there's what I call sneaky taxes, and here's what that aren't even passed by the county commission, and that is when they reappraise your property. Okay, I have a piece of property. It's commercially worth a couple $100,000. Well, they came in and sent me a letter that said it was $320. Now, where did they get that number? So I'm going to complain and say no, and then of course they're going to go back. But 90% of people are going to accept it. Going to accept that reappraisal, and that's the sneaky way these people make money. And I know business is pretty rough and tough, out here. But I'll tell you, government is a lot less ethical than business.
Well, this is
a lot less ethical.
Well, this is David Tulis and Tim Price of JATCO, the president of JATCO. Thanks for joining us very much. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the question is, I think, it's not just the level of taxation, and it's not just that the question, we do have to pay taxes because we have to pay for effectively the judge, right? The government is, in its original conception, is a very limited function. It's a negative function, and that would be the suppression of crime and the applause of the good, right? And biblically, in the free market analysis, which comes from the Bible, government has a very, very limited function. Essentially, the courts, right? The courts where disputes are settled and where the malefactor is brought to bar, right? That's what government is all about. But because we don't have a view of government as a negative function, but rather as a positive function, we have all kinds of expectations for it that it can't possibly fill. Humanitarian and educational and so on. And so it does many things badly. It does many things to turn, you might say, the hearts of children against their parents and parents against their children, and to prosper itself. It does not have a real fair play about it when a small businessman like you, my listeners, have to pay taxes. You have to pay personal taxes and many other things that without examination you agree to pay. And the big people, the multi-billion-dollar corporations with headquarters in Germany, can avoid millions and millions of dollars in taxes and have checks written on the county checkbook that you're paying taxes to fund, right? You're funding that account, and those checks go to Volkswagen, go to Amazon, and other big players, and you're paying the tax in your small business, and you're barely keeping up, right? Small business has a great problem, as Tim Price points out, with cash flow. Cash flow is a very serious problem in small businesses who can't get easy credit, who can't get mezzanine loans and whatnot for cash flow. They're suffering. They're hard put. They have to make cuts. They have to not do things. They have to keep things not current because of the expense of updating them, and they're struggling. And yet the big players ride easily into the marketplace with their new cars and their mass production. Well, it seems unjust and it seems unfair, but if you don't accept the limited role of government to running the courts, and you accept positive government, you accept positive law, and if you accept commercial government, then you just have to accept these things. You have to accept these inequities, and you better keep your mouth shut, okay? Keep your mouth shut if you accept the premise of commercial government. I don't accept it, and every time I think about it, it just makes me angry. We've got to have a better system. There's got to be a better way. What about education? Why do so many people support the state school system? People who have God on their side, who have God giving them commands. Why are their children there? That's a question I want to ask.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
Hey, dude.